you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Hey guys, Harrison, I'm back at it once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome to, I think it's to episode 10 now of Trade TV Season 2. I'm very, very glad this season's doing as well as it has done. Thanks for all the comments and the positive reviews. I'm really enjoying doing these and putting these episodes together. This is the series where we talk some F1 2014 and 2014 season stuff as well, and yeah, this is a video more to finish off the mini-series I had planned on a new era, basically, and how the landscape of Formula 1 seems to be changing quite a lot. In the last episode, we talked a lot about Fernando Alonso and his move to McLaren, the McLaren-Honda, the Honda partnership, Jenson Button, his place in the team, and what they were doing with guys like Kevin Magnussen and Stoffel Van Dorn. I'll put a link to it in the description if you've missed it and you want to check that out. Now it's the other side of the coin here, the other team going for a major change at the moment, and that's Ferrari. And when Ferrari do something big, it's always an even bigger deal because Ferrari is the centerpiece of this sport. They're the only team that's been around for every season. And it's also one of those situations where, you know, Ferrari are going through a complete exodus and a complete change of mentality and whatnot. And it's been arguably the season from hell for Ferrari. It's been a dreadful year for them. They made a huge deal about re-signing Kimi Räikkönen. They paid him $20 million for the season. Kimi Räikkönen had probably his worst year in Formula 1, maybe arguably worse than his rookie season at Sauber. Yeah, it really didn't go well for him this year at all. Struggled to get used to the car, struggled to adapt to the brake-by-wire system, and just generally just didn't seem to ever have a full grip of the car. I know Seb got a hard time this year at Red Bull, but look at the difference between him and Ricciardo's year, where Vettel still, I think, had a relatively decent season given everything that happened to him, and Kimi Räikkönen, who didn't really have bad luck, but was just average. So average, and he was in a car that was definitely better than the midfield guys like McLaren and Force India, yet was often racing against those dudes. So the Raikkonen signing didn't work out. Stefano Domenicali, and I use this term in inverted commas, retired from the team. Ferrari looked like they were going to be painfully mediocre. Like, they were average in China besides the Alonso podium, but Bahrain they finished 9th and 10th on pure pace and looked like the team were going to really, really struggle. So Domenicali quit the team, or as I like to call it, he jumped before he was pushed, essentially, in my opinion, because I still believe that Luca the Montezemolo was looking for any reason to get rid of him, and I think that was enough justification to basically put the whisper in the ear saying, you know what, you're better off quitting before I make this look really ugly. And I'm speculating here, but I think that's something that definitely has to be taken into account. They brought in Marco Mattiacci, the former head of Ferrari's USA development plan, with no prior F1 experience, and then people act surprised when it didn't really work out for him either. So he was let go at the end of the season, and obviously the big news, I think it was around Singapore kind of time, that Luca de Montezemolo quit Ferrari. It's like, oh, okay, Luca's gone too, and you know that was, I think, after 22 years as Ferrari presidents and whatnot. And as much as people like to give Luca a hard time, you can't deny he was a very key piece in what Ferrari has become today. And I don't get me wrong, I think he owes a lot of his success to Michael Schumacher, because Ferrari's car sales, here's a fun fact for you, Ferrari's car sales tripled when he and Michael was in the midst of their dominance in the early part of the 2000s. So Ferrari became a huge brand again, and I think that was partly down to Michael Schumacher. But at the same time, he quit the team, and then Fernando Alonso left the team, and I think that a lot of that was down to the fact that Fernando's two best supporters within that team, Stefano and Luca, had both gone, and Sergio Marchionne essentially walked through the door as new Ferrari president and was like, okay, everybody, your jobs are all at risk. Like, he had the straight up attitude of essentially, you know, everyone is expendable. Like, there is no one above the team. And apparently that kind of drove Fernando towards the exit door. And so, with Ferrari always wanting to have Sebastian Vettel in their team, I think Luca made it quite clear that if Alonso was to ever go, the driver he would go after would be Sebastian Vettel. And yeah, they got him essentially after 6 years at Red Bull and 15 years of being a part of the Red Bull family. Vettel signed a 5-year, $125 million contract. Sounds like an NFL contract when I read it out like that. A 5-year, $125 million contract to join Ferrari. And apparently Vettel negotiated that deal himself. Like he has no manager. So, like, I still find it amazing he talked to Sergio himself and drove out that bigger deal for himself. That's pretty amazing. I wish I had that kind of business acumen myself. But yeah, like, so essentially, Vettel signed the 5-year deal. He is going to be the new centerpiece of Ferrari, because Ferrari, as we all know, like to do things a little bit differently. They are the team that most predominantly has the number 1 and number 2 driver system, a lead and a supporting driver. Maybe other teams have it but aren't so obvious about it, but with Ferrari it's clear. That's what they've been doing for the most part for the last 25 years now, essentially. You know, Schumacher was the centerpiece when they signed him from Benetton in 1996. They built around him. They built around Kimi Räikkönen as the replacement for him in 2007, with Felipe Massa being the support guy. They kind of swapped roles when Räikkönen wasn't so good in 2008. But besides that, like, Massa was meant to be like the centerpiece in 2009, really, but then Massa got hurt, and that was the last time Ferrari had a really bad year. But they kind of had a viable reason as to why. Obviously, Massa's Hungary, his horrific accident there, and having Luca Badoer and Giancarlo Fisichella fill in wasn't the best idea, and it was the best they could do. But, you know, Ferrari kind of struggled that year. They finished 4th in the Constructors, and Ferrari struggled this year, and a change clearly needed to be made. For fun facts and for what it's worth, this was Ferrari's first winless season since 1993, and it was only the second time, again barring 2009, only the second time they finished outside of the top 3 of the Constructors since 1993. Back then, their drivers were John Alesi and Gerhard Berger. Yeah, kind of a different era back then, essentially. And yeah, a big difference as to where the team is now. And it's not like Ferrari had a bad driver lineup either. That was arguably Ferrari's strongest lineup in quite some time. Many people think Fernando Alonso is the best driver in the world, and there's a viable argument behind that. And Kimi Räikkönen was going into that team off the back of his Lotus run, which was excellent. So, you know, everybody was thinking, well, Ferrari's got the dream team here, you know, Alonso and Raikkonen, if they can coexist, they've got a chance at the title. Turns out Ferrari's car has been pretty uncompetitive all season long. Like, they came close to winning in Hungary with Fernando Alonso trying an outlandish 2-stop strategy, but it just didn't work out in the end. Daniel Ricciardo poaching Mercedes failures like he did all season long, essentially. So yeah, as a result, Ferrari have pretty much done a complete cull, for what it's worth. There's been strong restructuring going on at the moment. Pat Fry is gone from Ferrari, and I think something that many Ferrari fans feel has been, you know, long overdue. Something that you know, people have said should have happened a long time ago. I think James Allison is now in charge of the technical department there at Ferrari. They've got rid of their engine, the head of their engine development. Their tyre guru, I think, was gone. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I apologise for that. They've got a new press officer who used to be a Formula 1 journalist himself. Like, so essentially Ferrari have almost cleared the decks. I think they've signed, something like 60 new staff. They got somebody in from Mercedes the other day, which is, you know, a good move for them. And, you know, Ferrari are going through a complete rebuild here, and, you know, Sebastian Vettel is going to be the centerpiece, and I think that's an excellent hire. I know people have asked me to talk about Vettel in depth for a long time on this one, and what do I think of this, because I'm kind of like the internet Sebastian Vettel fan. For me, this was Vettel's childhood dream to drive for Ferrari, and that's something he said he always wanted to do, because his 3 heroes in life, he's always said, were the 3 Michaels: Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, and Michael Schumacher. And, you know, Schumacher, he said himself, was his childhood hero, so why not try and replicate in his footsteps? I mean, when Ferrari come knocking, you answer their phone calls, let's put it that way. And you know, I've always felt that, you know, Red Bull, with Adrian Newey stepping back from the sport to focus on other projects, and, you know, Daniel Kvyat, I think, is a downgrade on Sebastian Vettel, no matter which way you look at it in terms of driverhood. And while Daniel Ricciardo is good, he's only had one season at the top. We don't know if he'll be able to continue that. I feel like Red Bull was a team on the way down, especially given Renault's engine struggles as well. Ferrari's engines aren't great, but Ferrari always seem to catch up with engine development in the end, and Renault, I think, are in a bit of a mess at the moment for what it's worth. So, you know, getting out of that team, I think the timing's about right. I think Ferrari could very well be on the way up, having a new technical department, a new engine department, and a driver who is known for having a reputation of giving excellent feedback and development as to how to build an F1 car to suit his needs. During the blown diffuser era of the V8s, Vettel's feedback, according to Adrian Newey, was one of the prime reasons why he was so successful in there. He was able to make the car and the regulations work for him. It didn't quite work out so much this year at Red Bull, mainly because he had a severe lack of testing time, and essentially he didn't have the time to get used to a car that had a more unstable rear end. And Daniel Ricciardo having more testing time, having a blank slate to work with. Vettel was always playing catch-up last year, as much as people will obviously want to praise Ricciardo, and deservedly so. I think a lot of Vettel's misfortune was down to bad reliability, bad strategy calls, and essentially playing catch-up from Ricciardo from the get-go. He's now going to have the team built around him at Ferrari, and for better or worse, that may work out, it may not work out. I mean, we've just come off the Fernando Alonso era where he's done 5 years at that team and was unable to win a championship again. And despite Ferrari coming close on a couple of occasions, I think that's more down to Ferrari's structuring. Like, Felipe Massa was probably undeserving of that Ferrari seat for a good 2 years at least. Think of it this way. I remember, I think it was 2012, where essentially Alonso, Red Bull won the Constructors from Ferrari, I think by 60 points. 57 of that was the battle between the number 2 drivers. Red Bull had Mark Webber, who was still driving very well in 2012. Ferrari had Felipe Massa, who was struggling, and Webber outpointed Massa by 57. So you can work it out. Like, if Ferrari had a better second driver, they may have been able to poach a Constructors from Red Bull during their dominant era of 4 years at the top between 2010 and 13. So it's not like Ferrari hasn't come close. And I think people are overrating the issues they've had just a little bit, in the sense of it's not like Ferrari haven't come close in the 6 years since they last won the Constructors in 2008. But overall, it's an interesting time at Ferrari right now, and you know they've signed Esteban Gutierrez and John-Eric Verne as test drivers, and they're pretty good test drivers to have. Like, Verne is an excellent driver in his own right. I've mentioned before how I think him and Daniel Ricciardo are very similar. I think they're on the same kind of level. While Ricciardo takes the plaudits and Driver of the Year honours and whatnot, at the same time, I also feel that John-Eric Verne was very similar and was very unlucky to miss out on a Red Bull seat, not once but twice. Once when obviously Ricciardo was bumped up in 2014, and obviously when Vettel was moved on, they didn't just promote Verne, they went with Kvyat because they said he has more potential. So having a guy like him in your back pocket is kind of valuable as well. And this is definitely going to be kind of a prove-it deal for Sebastian Vettel as well. Like, Vettel has won 4 straight championships, yet I think he's the most questioned world champion in the modern era. And many people will put the car down as the reason why he's been so successful, and that's kind of become a new mantra in Formula 1, where dude in best car doesn't get full credit because of best car, which I think is a lame reason to condemn somebody, because that's the nature of Formula 1 itself. But many people I know are unconvinced because of the 4 years he had, and because of Ricciardo's dominant here this year. It's like, oh, he's been exposed. And while I don't think that's strictly true, I think at the same time it doesn't help what was already a lot of questionable fans out there saying, oh, he's got the best car, the car makes him so successful. Yeah, well, the car makes most drivers successful. Like, if you put Lewis Hamilton in a Caterham, he's not going to start winning races in it. He'll just be a little bit better than his teammate. That's just how the way I look at it, and I think the car is is worth about 75% of a dude's success, and I think 20% of that is down to politics in F1 as well, but that's for another video. But this is kind of a prove-it deal for Sebastian. If Vettel can win a championship in Ferrari, he surely has to go down as one of the best drivers ever. You know, something that I know a lot of people value, the idea of winning a championship in 2 different cars and whatnot, and, you know, Vettel would be doing what Alonso tried so hard to do, which was to win a championship with more than one team. And, you know, it's a big deal for Seb, and it's a big chapter for him. He's still only 27 years old. He's still got many, many years ahead of him. He's got his prime years ahead of him. The problem is that Mercedes are that dominant, so I don't think it really matters what Ferrari does, to be honest with you. But there's a lot going on at Ferrari right now, and I'd love to hear your take on what's going on down there. Do you think the restructuring will work? What do you think of Vettel? Will he be a success in that unit? What about Kimi Raikkonen? Is this Raikkonen's last year in Formula 1? Is it his last chance to prove that he's still a decent driver? Because he was very poor this year. Do you think the restructuring will work? I'd love to hear you guys' take on these things as always. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.